Popcap Games, one of my favorite game studios ever. Even if you haven't heard of them, you've still probably played one of their games. Plants vs. Zombies, Peggle, Bejeweled, and tons of others. These games are classics for anyone who grew up in the early 2000s. I personally had an obsession with Plants vs. Zombies in 2010 or so when I was in elementary school. But in college too, I went through a phase of being obsessed with Peggle, and I honestly don't even know if I'm out of that phase yet. Popcap is iconic to a lot of people my age because they had so many games you could pretty easily access on your tablet or your grandma's computer or whatever. Their games were perfect for that hit of simple yet satisfying fun. But with so many games, that begs the question. Which one is the best? Which ones are decent? And which games should be avoided like the plague? Well, luckily for you, I'm here to answer that question. And I'm gonna be honest, it was surprisingly hard to get a concrete list of which games were developed by Popcap. I used this list from Wikipedia as a start, which I know Wikipedia isn't the best source, but Jesus dude, this rabbit hole goes so deep. Wikipedia was the only list that was remotely legible. Even so, I had to narrow down the Wikipedia list quite a bit, since a few games on there weren't actually developed by Popcap. But I think I made a somewhat comprehensive ranking using the following criteria. First, I'm only including games that were developed by Popcap, not games that were published by them. Notably, this excludes the entire Mystery PI series, and a few other games on Steam that were developed by Spintop Games. A few more that got cut from this criteria are the games developed by Nuclide Games and Retro64, and a few miscellaneous games. Steam lists a few of these games as being developed by Popcap. However, after some research, I figured out that these games were developed by studios that were eventually merged with Popcap. I did kinda go back and forth on whether I should include these or not, but ultimately, I didn't want this video to take like 400 years to make like my last one, so I decided to cut them. The only exception to this rule is Sprout Games. I was disappointed when I found out their games wouldn't count because I really wanted to talk about Feeding Frenzy. But then I remembered, oh yeah, this is my video, I can do whatever I want to do. So I decided to just include them anyways. Sorry for being inconsistent. There are also a few games here that were developed by Popcap, however, I couldn't find a safe version of them to play, or they were just not available anymore. So those were cut too. So sorry to all the Banana Bugs fans out there, it's not going to be on this list. But if I cut something glaringly obvious, just let me know in the comments and I'll try to make a follow-up short or something. Also, for the purpose of this video, I'm considering the deluxe and other versions of each game to be the same as the standard edition. I generally tried to play the deluxe though. Second, I'm gonna play each game for 2 hours before writing my thoughts. I think 2 hours is more than fair since, for one, that's generally how long you have to play a game on Steam before you can refund it. And two, I want to be able to make this video in a reasonable time frame. Beating every game on the list would, well, make the opposite of that be true. And in retrospect, I do think for basically every game on this list, I got the gist of whether I liked it or not after those 2 hours. And let me just say, some of these games were a struggle to get through for even that long. So I'm not trying to torture myself more than I already am. Anyways, with those criteria, I was able to narrow the list down to a nice even 40 games, which I'll show on screen now. We have heavyweights going up against coughing babies here, so it should make for an interesting list. Now, without further ado, let's get into the ranking. No joke, this might be one of the worst games I've ever played. I'm like passionate about how much I hate it. I don't even know where to begin. Well, for starters, this game gave me the pleasant surprise that I actually had to play 8 Bejeweled games instead of 7. Because this is in fact a Bejeweled clone, hooray! Bejeweled is already not my favorite series from Popcap. It's not bad, just kinda eh. But to add insult to injury, this isn't just a Bejeweled clone, it's a Bejeweled Twist clone, which is already an even worse version of Bejeweled. Okay, but that at least must mean it's Bejeweled Twist with a new coat of paint, right? Well, yes and no. The core gameplay is pretty much the same. However, they threw these really dull Pokemon-esque battles on top of things. And I'm gonna be real, you can pretty much just ignore these and play the game how you'd usually play Bejeweled. So in the long run, this just ends up being Bejeweled Twist with way too much happening on the screen. It's like nauseating even looking at this game. The presentation in general is just awful. The game refuses to stop throwing tutorial text and hints at you. Like, okay, I understand, just let me play the game. But despite how much the game over-explains things, I still couldn't figure out how to move my character on the map for like 2 minutes. And speaking of, the map and monster system reminded me of World of Light, which generally is not something you really want to be compared to. Oh, and also, this game has so many bugs. I only played for 2 hours, but the game crashed multiple times.
Yeah, they show kids in their 20s.
Putrid penis.
Dude,
There he goes again.
I did it again.
That's right, Bejeweled with a fancy coat of paint crashed. It also crashes most of the time when you alt-tab, which of course it does. And best of all, the game randomly deleted all my save data. What? What? It deleted my game! I think my expectations for this game are part of the reason I had such a strong negative reaction to it. The interesting thing about Gyromancer is that it's the only game on this list that wasn't published by Popcap. It was developed by Popcap, but also co-developed and published by Square Enix. So I thought, hey, maybe this game will at least be something different and unique compared to the rest of the games on this list. What I didn't expect was to get a worse version of my least favorite Bejeweled game, which Bejeweled itself is already a very overdone concept with 7 games. But yeah, this was the game where I really started to regret my criteria of playing for 2 hours minimum, because it was such a slog to get through. E tier, almost no redeeming qualities to this one. Okay, before I even get into this section, I have to admit something. Typer Shark is one of the few games where I had to break the rules a little bit. I didn't actually play this game for 2 hours. I only made it 45 minutes in. However, I feel like I have a good enough reason for this, being that the game doesn't actually save your progress when you exit to the desktop. This is ridiculous enough on its own, but when combined with the gameplay, it's just a recipe for disaster. Which, speaking of gameplay, I guess I should mention that. It's incredibly simple. Type the words on the shark before they reach your character. This would be a fine gameplay loop if I enjoyed typing for fun, but I don't enjoy typing for fun. So this was a total slog to get through. I don't know, maybe if this game actually saved, I'd give it a more genuine attempt. But even so, I was getting pretty antsy and ready to quit after like 10 minutes of playtime. So I don't think another hour would really change my mind, in all honesty. Not much else to say really. E tier. The Steam version is broken, and the parts that aren't broken are just not fun at all to me.
Ziggy Pop.
It's Iggy Pop.
Whatever.
I did not care for Iggle Pop. The closest thing I can compare it to is Pac-Man, but instead of eating all the pellets, you have to collect all the Iggles and return them to the corresponding color-coded goal. The gameplay is also extremely easy. Unlike Pac-Man, you almost never get cornered. The real challenge comes from trying to get a high score, since you get a higher score if the Iggles in your chain next to each other are the same color. I don't really like this method of making the game harder, since if you don't care about score, which I know a lot of people don't, there's almost no challenge. I didn't really find myself caring about the score, so my main motivation for not dying was avoiding the annoyance of having to manually recollect every single Iggle. In fact, most of my deaths came from trying to squeeze past the enemies because I was trying to complete the levels quicker. The one thing I did like from this game was the scatting guy on the soundtrack. He was kinda epic, I'm not gonna lie. Low D tier. I found myself checking the clock every 5 minutes to see if my 2 hours was up.
Easy money!
Big money. This is an extremely simple match 3 game, like almost too simple. Literally all you do is click on sets of coins where 3 or more of the same color are touching. No control over where the coins go, no strategy, just spam. And yeah, this devolved into spam clicking in record time, since there's no penalty for clicking where there isn't a match. I guess it can be satisfying getting huge chains, but even after just like 20 minutes, it already felt like my brain was melting.
Puzzle mode is probably my favorite game mode here because you actually have to think before clicking. But even so, it's not really anything to write home about. I will say though, this game has an undeniable aura to it. I mean, just look at the main guy. This dude fucks. Plus, I will admit, the game genuinely made me laugh once or twice with the rank names. Probably a low D tier for big money. Alchemy was the last game that I played when making this list, and let me just say, it didn't live up to the hype. Like, at all. I am really not a fan of this game. The objective of Alchemy is to fill up every square on the board with runes. However, the hard part comes from the fact that you can only place runes next to each other if they have matching colors or matching symbols. And yeah, this gameplay loop is about as fun as it sounds. I don't know, maybe my brain just isn't built for strategy like this, but even so, I can't really see fans of strategy games liking this all that much anyways. Things get very tedious very quickly, and I devolved into spam clicking out of frustration. And okay, this is kind of a tangent, but why is this the only game on here that I had to use the EA store to buy, where it's $5 and never goes on sale? Plenty of games similar to this quality-wise are on Steam, and even more that are 10 times better than it are just not available anywhere. Why does Alchemy get special treatment? It's just super confusing. At least the music goes incredibly hard. It's genuinely the best thing about this game. Low D tier. Alchemy is really not my thing.
It sucks. The drawings are pretty good, but the characters are lame, okay?
God, the characters are lame. I'm a loser. I wish I was dead.
Chuzzle, the Chud puzzle game. You know, with a name like Chuzzle, I really thought this would be something more, I don't know, not extremely boring. This is pretty much the same thing as Bejeweled, except you move an entire row instead of swiping one gem. This is an okay concept, but it felt a bit awkward. I feel like this is somehow just a worse version of Bejeweled, which is crazy to me that they managed to do that with such a simple concept. I found myself getting bored with this pretty quickly. Like, the gameplay, music, and art style do nothing for me either. These guys are trying way too hard to be cute. I haven't even seen Yu-Gi-Oh, but I just know the guy from that is both cooler and cuter than these things. I will say though, this concept is so bizarre that I can't help but be intrigued. Why are we matching 3 of these creatures together? Why do their souls go into a test tube? Am I killing them? Do they feel pain? Oh my god, am I a monster? D tier. I kept going back and forth between this and Bejeweled for this spot. I was originally going to give Chuzzle the edge because it's unique, whereas Bejeweled has so many other games in the series, but after thinking about it some more, nah, I really can't justify that. This game sucks. Oh boy, the first of many Bejeweled games on this list, and actually the first game Popcap ever made. And I'll be honest, the age definitely shows here. I initially wrote Bejeweled off as a sauceless experience the first time I played it. However, the game isn't quite as bad as I thought. This is probably the quintessential match 3 game. And speaking of, I should probably define what a match 3 game even is. A match 3 game is a game where the objective is to match a certain number of light-colored elements together, and doing so deletes the elements you matched. You've definitely seen these types of games before. Even though it wasn't the first, Bejeweled is probably the most popular game in this genre, rivaled only by Candy Crush. A decent amount of games on this list are match 3 games and were directly inspired by Bejeweled, since it was a hugely successful game at the time of its release. And I can really see why this game was influential to other huge games like Candy Crush. It does have that satisfying simplicity to it. When you get a meaty string of combos, I can't deny it does feel pretty good. The chains are super satisfying. On the other hand, the game is a bit slow and can be really boring at times. The randomness is very frustrating too. The RNG feels less controllable like in other games, and more like hoping and praying you don't happen to get screwed over and run out of moves. The time mode fixes the randomness by having the board reset when you're out of moves, but even so, this mode feels unbeatable up to a certain level unless you have very good RNG. The game is definitely too slow in regular mode though. The time trial is much more my speed. It's also cool that they offer you hints, but don't force you to use them after a few seconds, which is surprisingly something they don't really do later in the series. The music in this game also goes unnecessarily hard, specifically the loading screen music. If it was on Spotify, I'd add it to my electronic playlist, just saying. D tier. Despite doing some things well, I have no clue why you'd want to play this over some of the later Bejeweled games. Bejeweled Blitz is pretty much just Bejeweled on mobile, except it only has Blitz mode, where you have to see how many points you can get in 1 minute. I'm really not a fan of this only having Blitz. Like, only being able to play for 1 minute is super unsatisfying. I want to play a slower version of the game sometimes. This game also has the typical mobile pay-to-win stuff, but at the very least, you earn the currency to buy it in-game. Still, it's frustrating that if you want to play it without the expensive and temporary upgrades, you score like 20 times less. It's ridiculous. Although the worst part of all are the pop-ups. Like, no, I do not want to buy the overpriced upgrade. Please stop asking. And the ads too. I don't know if I just got lucky or something, but I actually didn't get any ads until like 30 minutes in. And then I started getting them every other game. It feels like I was lulled into a false sense of security thinking there wasn't going to be any ads, and then they assaulted me all at once. Still, the game is okay in like 5-minute bursts if you're in a waiting room or in the car or something like that, but since it's only Blitz, it's definitely not meant to be played for long stretches of time, which I would argue is a pretty big fault. D tier. One of my least favorite versions of Bejeweled.
Pizza Frenzy!
The second entry from Sprout Games on this list, Pizza Frenzy is a fine enough clicker game. I'm not sure if that's the right word for it, but that's the best way I can describe this game. Essentially, all you have to do in this game is click orders and match them with the corresponding ingredient. It's pretty simple, so things can get a bit boring after a while in the standard game mode. Luckily, there is a tiny bit of strategy in trying to get a combo, where you get a bunch of orders with the same ingredient in a row, at the risk of other callers hanging up. The main game mode isn't really my thing. I enjoyed the memory game mode more personally. It functions similarly to those Match 2 games where you lay all the cards face down. Bruh. Except in this game, you can't get any wrong. This mode actually had a bit of a challenge to it, but still it's not the craziest thing in the world. The Simon Says game mode though, that mode was genuinely pretty tough. In it, you have to fill the orders in the same order that they were ordered. That's a mouthful, but yeah, this mode was actually really tough. At a certain point, it just became like impossible for my brain to keep up. Still, it's not a bad experience. High D tier. Simple and very boring at times, but it still has some things that make it worth playing.
No!
PvZ2, the sequel to one of the best games in the tower defense genre, and it absolutely did not live up to the hype. There's so many issues with this game, it's not even funny. The biggest thing for me has to be the way they messed up the progression. It was nice in the first game when you beat a longer level and unlocked a new plant as a reward. But at the same time, it was nice to be in each area for only 10 levels before moving on. Plus, you'd get a new zombie type to strategize around every 2 levels. In this game, I did my 2-hour rule to judge the game, and I was on the desert levels the entire time, which is just frustrating. It gets extremely repetitive when it's the same 4 zombies and 10 plants for 20 levels straight. Another thing that affects this is the pacing within the levels themselves. For one, you get 50 sun for every sun you click on now, which is kinda bizarre because the plants all cost the same amount of sun as the first game. So you essentially get plants twice as fast. This is a pointless change in actuality though, because the zombies spawn so much faster in this game. So one change offsets the other. But these two things combined just make it feel like you're spamming plants to keep up with all the zombies. And the level is usually over before you can really even get set up. I don't know, having a huge horde of zombies spawning quickly is a cool idea, I just feel like the execution was botched. Speaking of good ideas though, one addition I actually really enjoyed was plant food. It helps slow down the pace a little bit, which is good. This game also has some really cool plant concepts. However, I wish I could have used more of the plants. Like I alluded to earlier, I barely got any plants in my 2 hours of playtime. I think I only had 10 by the 2-hour mark, which is pathetic compared to Plants vs. Zombies 1, where I easily would have had 25 or 30 in that time. And arguably one of the worst sins this game commits is with the monetization and ads. A lot of the plants are locked behind a paywall, which is like the biggest indicator of how hard this series fell off since the first game. The last thing I wanted to mention before moving on was the music. It's fine, not even close to Laura Shikihara's soundtrack, but that's a really high bar to be fair. Funnily, I found that if you swipe down on iOS, the music plays from the beginning. However, the original music track keeps playing too. I don't know, man. This game has potential with the time travel gimmick. If only the monetization wasn't so horrible and the levels were more focused and less repetitive. D tier. It's really a shame how this one turned out. We are not beating the baby game allegations with this one. Noah's Ark is an extremely basic matching game where you have to match two animals of the same species together so they can get on the ark. And yes, there's a lot to unpack there. Firstly, yes, this is the same Noah of Bible fame, so Popcap is a Christian company confirmed? Bjorn for Pope? And second, am I breeding animals in this kid's game? Whenever you match two of them, little hearts appear before they enter the ark. I can only imagine that at least one kid got the talk after asking their parents about this game. Okay, but as far as my actual thoughts go, this game is extremely simple, yes, but it is fun for a few minutes. Anything longer than that though, and yes, this will get very repetitive. I also think I might have got carpal tunnel from this, so make of that as you will. I think the main game mode is probably the best. The strategy mode is good too though. It can actually be pretty fun to strategize on how to get matches without blocking other animals, but it just never ends if you even remotely know what you're doing. And the puzzle mode is, well, this is literally just Bejeweled. They didn't even try to hide it. And speaking of copying other games, the bonus stage is literally just big money as well. Okay, last thing, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record here, but why is this soundtrack so good? This theme goes crazy. High D tier. Not the most original game, clearly, but it's decently fun to speedrun. I could see this being a perfect first video game for some younger kids. Word Harmony is the first of a few word-making games on this list, and I'd pretty easily say it's the worst. In this game, you basically just move around these orbs with letters on them to create words. I didn't really like the main game mode at all, where you have to make words before the water reaches the top of the screen. It was honestly really boring and tedious. Plus, the screen was so cluttered it was hard to even think straight. The puzzle and relax game modes were a lot more fun. In both, you have limited letters and have to use them to make words. Puzzle specifically was cool because you actually have to use your brain to make words and have no letters left over at the end. Relax was pretty cool too, focusing more on navigating the geometry of the level to make specific words. It was pretty satisfying in all honesty. But still, both of these game modes got kinda tedious after like 20 minutes. This game just kinda lacks that special sauce, which makes sense since it looks like this was Sprout Games' first ever project. All in all, it's a very low C tier for me. Not bad for a first game, and it probably was more fun in 2003, but it really doesn't hold up for me. When I was first writing this list, Bejeweled Twist was definitely my least favorite Bejeweled game. For starters, it just crashes when you open it on Steam. I had to use a tutorial to fix that, which already docks some points. As for the actual gameplay, this really didn't need to be its own game. I don't see why this wasn't just an extra game mode in Bejeweled 2 or 3. The gimmick here is the twist mechanic. Instead of just swiping gems like in the other games, you have to twist them into groups of 3. The twist mechanic is interesting at first, but eventually it just devolves into randomly spamming. Since there's hardly any punishment for spamming other than bombs, which you can easily deal with before you go right back to spamming. It also feels much harder to control than the simple swipes of the previous games. This is worse seen in the challenges, which more so frustrated me than made me think. It's incredibly tedious to set up a streak of 4 orange matches in a row, for example. Notice how I didn't say it was hard, it's just tedious. It does have some great music though, really only beat out by Bejeweled 2. Overall, this is fun for like 15 minutes, then it just becomes frustrating. I could never see myself playing this over Bejeweled 3 or even Bejeweled 2 for that matter. Low C tier. I debated on D, but at least this game is unique, I guess, which pushes it above Blitz and the first Bejeweled game. However, this game isn't necessarily good, just unique. PvZ Heroes is a very simple deck building game that takes place in the Plants vs. Zombies universe. Deck builders are very hit or miss for me, but I'm also not really too experienced with them. The only ones I've ever played are Inscription and Slay the Spire, which feels a bit unfair to compare to this free mobile game. The gameplay here is nothing complicated. You just have to try to have your cards hit the enemy hero for 20 damage to win, but the enemy will try and block you. The gameplay loop is fine. It can be very repetitive, and I don't really understand why you can't save up energy between rounds. That would actually give the game a bit more strategy, since building your deck is pretty much the only strategy this game offers. The rest is just spam. Because this is a mobile game, there is the obvious watch an ad to get free coins type stuff, but it's not as in your face as many other mobile games, so it's pretty easy to ignore. But yeah, the gameplay isn't really my thing. However, I do actually like the aesthetic a lot. It's an interesting twist to have the PvZ characters with a superhero theme. I especially liked the incredible sounding music. It was pretty neat. Low C tier. Pretty brain dead, but ultimately an inoffensive addition to this franchise. Peggle DualShot is pretty much just Peggle on the DS, but don't let that fool you. This is a very different game for a few reasons. The main thing being, the physics feel slightly off. It's kinda hard to put it into words, but it just feels slower and a bit clunkier. I don't really like the new physics, although if I'd never played the other games, maybe I wouldn't mind. Aiming with the stylus just adds to the slow feeling. It's very clunky. And this is only compounded by the fact that you can't fast forward. I know this seems like a minor issue, but it really slows things down when you're waiting to line up a good shot. Such a weird feature to remove. I do like how this game implemented the pink pegs though. If you hit 5 of them in the same game, it takes you to a mini game, which reminds me of a more traditional pinball game where you have to bounce around your ball collecting as many gems as possible. It doesn't really affect anything other than your score, but it is a pretty cool addition regardless. The art is mostly the same, except the character you choose will be dancing around at the top of the screen when you play, which doesn't really add anything substantial, but it's a cute little addition. I also like how when you boot up the game, you can choose between Peggle and Peggle Knights. It's cool to have that option. C tier. I don't really see any reason to play this over the original Peggle games. Unless you're in the hyper-specific group of people who have a DS but not a computer. This game is a downgrade for sure, but not egregiously so. Okay, I kinda lied at the beginning of this video when I said there's only 40 games on the list, because even though I literally recorded all the footage and wrote this entire section of the script, I totally forgot to include Insane Aquarium on the final version of this list. Oops. But anyways, getting back on track, this game lives up to its name. The objective is to pretty much spawn fish in and feed them, which gives you money that you can use to spawn more fish, which gives you money that you can use to buy better fish, until you reach a certain threshold of money where you can beat the level. Things do start out slow and somewhat tedious, but like lots of other idle games, things get crazy exponentially quick, until your screen is literally filled with insanity. One thing I didn't mention before is that every once in a while, an alien will randomly spawn and try to kill as many fish as possible. Firstly, this is already just an insane concept for a fish tank game, but also they're designed like xenomorphs and predators, which is like, okay, cool, but really random. This game isn't exactly complex. It mostly devolves into spam clicking with little strategy or skill other than how fast you can click. It genuinely got to the point where it started to hurt how fast you had to click later in the game. But even so, I can't deny it is very satisfying when you start to get a crazy amount of fish constantly spawning money. C tier. Lots of good and bad about this game.
You cheated. Pirate.
7 Seas is very similar to a game that shows up later on this list called Mummy Maze. The objective is to destroy all the pirate ships on screen without letting them touch you. There are usually 5 or more ships coming after you at once. So to turn the tide, you have to manipulate the AI of the ships. Since they come at you directly regardless of obstacles, you can get them to crash into each other if you're careful enough. It's actually pretty fun trying to outsmart the predictable AI. However, my issue with the game is with the replayability. While the levels are technically different, they all feel pretty much identical. I know it's cliche, but this is really the type of game that would benefit from being turned into a roguelike. It would be really cool if every few levels you could upgrade your speed or cannon range or something like that. Unreasonable for a game from 2001, I know, but as is, the gameplay got pretty stale. It could have used some sort of X factor. Another thing that isn't really the game's fault, but I still thought I'd mention, I didn't know there was an undo button for like the first hour that I played this. I know that's pretty stupid, but whatever. Since I tend to play games like this by experimenting and then undoing if my idea doesn't work, I got extremely frustrated. Once I realized it existed though, the undo button made things a lot less frustrating on the early levels. But eventually the button just stops working, so things got frustrating all over again at that point. Some of the advanced AI are also pretty annoying, since you have to essentially checkmate them to win, which can be really tedious against a near perfect CPU. Feeling a C tier for 7 Cs, no pun intended. A really fun gameplay loop at first, it just got stale pretty fast. And by later on this list, I mean the very next entry. Mummy Maze is very similar to 7 Cs like I mentioned. It's a top-down puzzle game where you have to avoid the mummy and escape. The mummy moves twice as fast as you, but will always take a direct path towards you, meaning you have to outsmart the AI. It's very easy to understand, but offers a fun challenge nonetheless. Outsmarting the AI is what really makes the game satisfying. And the thing that makes it slightly better than 7 Cs is that you get more leniency with making mistakes, for the simple reason that you can always undo or reset the level without any consequences. Now I'm not sure if my brain just isn't built for this game or what, but I started getting stumped on some of the really early levels. Weirdly enough, some of the levels immediately after the hard ones will be super easy. Like, just walk to the exit easy. So, I don't know, that might just be an issue with the ordering of the levels. Not bad, it's the perfect game to boot up and play a level or two to kill some time, but stop me if you see a pattern here, it gets repetitive very quickly. High C tier. Like most of the games in the bottom half of this list, it's fun in small doses.
Yeah, nerd.
Bookworm Adventure is an RPG spin-off of the original Bookworm game. I don't know if this is a controversial opinion, but I prefer the simplicity of the original game. A lot of the changes in this game just don't really work for me. Which, speaking of, I was surprised that this actually changes a lot from the first game. Mainly in that it's an RPG, or at least a bare bones version of one. It includes everything you'd expect from an RPG, like XP, items, and upgrades. The upgrades are genuinely kinda cool, since the game makes you pick only 3, forcing you to consider if you want to prioritize damage, defense, or a mix of both. However, the other change is that when making a word, the letters no longer have to be touching. This is both a good and a bad change. Good because it can let you make some crazy words, which is always satisfying, but bad because it makes things more tedious. I feel like I was thinking way less in this game compared to the original, which made the whole combat loop less engaging and more repetitive. By the end of the game, this, in tandem with the extremely tanky enemies, made the game feel like a chore to complete. The aesthetic is also... yeah, it's not great. I do love Lex, but basically every other character is extremely ugly. I can look past the bad art style most of the time, but with this game, it's really bad. They also included a story for this game, which is cool. It's very simple, which is fine, since it really didn't need to be anything complicated. I liked going through the different ancient Greek areas. It was pretty cool. High C tier, an okay word-based game.
Yes, I am a nerd!
This is literally the exact same game as Bookworm Adventures 1. Okay, maybe it's not exactly the same. The only differences are that you get access to gem tiles from the beginning, and now instead of 3 upgrades, you get to pick 2 and a companion, who essentially acts as a third, more powerful upgrade. These are definitely improvements, although they're extremely minor. It still doesn't stop the game from feeling repetitive like the previous one. Honestly, I had much more fun doing the minigames. I'd play an entire game of just them, to be honest. The aesthetic is also pretty much the same, which is kind of surprising to me. Since this game came out 3 years after the first, I figured that would at least be improved. At least the theming is still pretty great. The fairy tale enemies were a lot of fun. High C tier, a tiny improvement from the first game. So, Peggle Blast. I will say, this game wasn't as bad as I was expecting, but also, this game isn't exactly great. It's essentially just Peggle on mobile with a few differences, mainly being the characters and physics. And I guess I should probably explain what Peggle even is, since I haven't even done that yet. The objective of Peggle is to light up every single orange peg. You light up pegs by hitting them with a ball, and once a peg is lit up, it'll disappear at the end of your turn. You also get different characters with unique abilities to spice things up. Peggle is one of my favorite series on this list, which I feel is pretty telling since the lowest entry that isn't a remake is halfway up the list here at spot 21. But what are my thoughts on this entry in the series specifically? Well, I was surprised to learn that there aren't any ads. I know, crazy concept, right? However, this game does do something almost worse, where you can only get 5 game overs in a certain period of time before you have to pay money to continue. I get it, free mobile games have to make money somehow, but this is not the way you should be doing it. Oh, and there are also some minor paid upgrades, but I just ignored them like I usually do. Unfortunately, this game has an art style closer to Peggle 2 than the original games, which is... I will say, one thing that this game does better than the original Peggle is that when you get Extreme Fever, it releases every unused ball, and you get bonus points if you get a ball in every single slot on the bottom of the screen. This is actually a pretty cool change, since it incentivizes you to save balls more than the previous games. I also didn't expect for there to be unique objectives and stage hazards in this game, but it surprised me in a good way. They are kinda mixed, like the fireballs are annoying, but other gimmicks like the gem level were pretty fun. Overall, low B tier. Peggle Blast unfortunately has the issue of, I can just play a much better version of this game, so why even bother playing it? The same issue that some of the other games in these bottom tiers have. Even so, I had my fun with this game for a bit. And at the halfway point, we have Peggle Extreme. What the hell even is this game, bro? It's a Peggle x Valve collab because I don't even know why, just roll with it. I have a running joke with my friends that this is the worst Peggle game. Spoiler alert, it's not. But at the same time, this game isn't great. Like, okay, yes, the game is free, but Jesus man, this is literally just 10 levels. There are a few challenges as well, but they didn't take too long to beat either. Alright, so I beat the adventure mode, and I just beat all of the challenges. So it's time for the grand reveal of how long did this take me to beat. Alright, doesn't want to work. 74 minutes, bro. Golly. But honestly, the brevity of the game isn't even my biggest issue. Would I have preferred it to be longer? Definitely. I would have even paid for a longer version. If the game had more than one character. Like, oh my god. Why is Bjorn, aka the most useless character of the original cast, the only option here? I'm not a computer guy, but like, it's not like they'd have to do a ton of extra work to put in the other characters. They literally already exist in the other game. Just like copy and paste them or something. But no, we're stuck with Bjorn and his super guide. His ability can be helpful at times, but it also just kind of feels like training wheels. I'd literally take any other character over Bjorn. Okay, tangent aside, even as the world's biggest Peggle Extreme hater, even I have to admit, the artwork is pretty hilarious. Some of these caught me off guard the first time I saw them. It's the saving grace of the game for sure, and it's ultimately the reason why I can't put the game too low. Plus, it's still Peggle at the end of the day, and it's hard to mess up Peggle. I'm in a good mood, so I'll give it a low B tier. Could have been great given the concept, but as is, it's on very thin ice this high up on the list. Bookworm is a simple but fun word game. It reminds me of that iOS Messenger game, which my mom and I love. It's like that game, but more complicated, which is a good thing. Like most of these kinds of games, it's fun to see what kinds of BS words you can get away with. It's a nice touch that they include a definition specifically when you make a word that seems questionable at best. I also like how you can take your time in this game. It lets you focus on making longer and better words, which is probably the most satisfying part of the game. I also like trying to get a high score even more so than in previous games, since it displays your best words on the high score page. Funnily enough, my main issue with this game is with the controls. Now, even though there's literally one button, that being left click, I still found myself getting frustrated at how you can accidentally click a letter. You have to click it again to get off that letter. This might seem obvious, but for some reason it felt really unnatural. This wasn't a huge issue in regular mode, but in action mode it became really frustrating. Action mode in general is just more stressful than fun, since you can't really get any of those longer words without the flame tiles constantly coming down. This doesn't really affect the ranking too much though, since I'd personally just stick with the standard mode. B tier for Bookworm. I prefer the challenge of making words in this game to the Bookworm adventure games. Bejeweled Stars actually has a much more interesting concept than I expected. It's essentially just the strategy mode from Bejeweled but on mobile. You usually have to do an objective like clear a certain number of specific gems. An example being clear 25 red gems in 30 moves. And credit where credit is due, there's some really interesting ways they play with the layout of the board, with some levels having things like a conveyor belt for example. Pretty cool, since at this point I was expecting the same old tired Bejeweled affair. Being the other mobile Bejeweled, I like this a lot more than Bejeweled Blitz, since you actually have to think to set up chains and reach your goal, rather than just spamming as fast as you can in that game. Bejeweled Stars is much better to be played in longer stretches, since you don't feel rushed and can just chill. With this being a mobile game, at first I got excited because I thought this was devoid of the pay-to-win stuff in Blitz, but no. It doesn't have pay-to-win upgrades like in Blitz. Well, sorta. Instead, it has upgrades that you have to charge, and of course, you can pay to speed up the process. Honestly, I should have expected this, but oh well. I just ignored it and played the game normally. My only other complaint is the aesthetic. It's fine, but at the same time it looks really generic. There's absolutely nothing that makes it stand out. B tier. I found myself actually really enjoying this game for what it is. The only thing holding it back are those mobile game tropes. If this game got rid of the mobile game currency and just focused on being bejeweled with interesting layouts, I'd call it a great game. But for now, it just barely misses out on that title. Opening this up and immediately getting an ad was not a good sign. However, my fears were mostly unjustified. Mostly. So I'll start with the bad for Bejeweled Classic. It's literally just the ads. I don't know why, but when you open the game, you only have like 0.5 seconds before you're immediately bombarded with an ad. And then as soon as the ad is over and you click to start a game, it plays another ad. Luckily though, once you start a game, it goes on uninterrupted. So it's not really the end of the world. You can remove the ads for $3, but this is kind of pricey considering that you also have to pay $3 to unlock poker mode, meaning the total cost of the game is $6, $1 more than Bejeweled 3 is on Steam. But yeah, that's really the only issue I have with this game. This is a pretty faithful mobile port of Bejeweled 3, which, spoiler alert, I like that game a lot. It has everything Bejeweled 3 has, which is actually a lot of content for a free mobile game. This game was honestly one of the biggest surprises of the video, considering that I expected some crappy version of Bejeweled on mobile. I'm honestly confused why Wikipedia even lists this as a separate game from Bejeweled 3, but whatever, I already played it and got the footage, so why not include it? This game is somewhat hard to rank, just because like I said, it's really only held back by the ads, so I'll just say B tier.
Good.
Back to the mainline Bejeweled games, Bejeweled 2 improves upon the first game so much it's not even funny. There's so many more game modes and little gameplay additions that keep this from feeling repetitive. Probably the best addition is that you can match 4 gems to get an explosive gem now. That alone instantly makes this game outclass Bejeweled 1, where getting 4 or 5 gems at once just added to your score. So lots of the time you didn't even realize you matched more than 3. And don't even get me started on matching 5 gems. If you manage to, you'll get a hypercube which will destroy every gem of the color you swipe it into. Being incentivized to look out for rows of 5 changes the way you play the game for the better, if only subtly. The puzzle mode was actually a huge addition as well. It offers a fun extra challenge, and more importantly, something different to do than the main game mode.
Puzzle solved. The music is also an improvement from the first, which is saying something. The first game's early internet aesthetic is pretty great, but this game takes those old themes and makes them sound much fuller. The level backgrounds, on the other hand, are a drastic improvement from the first. The different levels actually look different in this game. I actually found myself looking forward to seeing what the next level would look like. B tier. This is such a huge improvement over the first game that it retroactively hurts that game since there's literally no reason to play it over this. I feel like ranking the Wizard's Pen this high will be very controversial, but hear me out. The objective of the game is to guess what the item on the notepad is, by revealing only a small part of it at a time. You get more points for guessing correctly the less you have revealed. And let me just say, I had way more fun playing this than I had any right to. I don't know if it was just the mindset I was in or what, but I was getting hyped when I got the answers right.
Pipe! I said pipe!
There's also levels with different gimmicks, which were a mixed bag. A lot of them made me feel stupid when I couldn't get the most obvious thing.
Oh, he doesn't have hair? Yo!
I don't know. It's simple fun, but I could see people thinking it's too simple, which is fair. This is a borderline baby game, but I don't care. It's satisfying.
8-ball!
Green ball.
Green ball.
Also, the vibes in this game, it has that early computer game look to it with those simplistic 3D models. It's a very specific aesthetic that I have a soft spot for. Plus, the wizard theming was pretty cool too. It's very Halloween-y, which is lucky because that's my favorite holiday. Even though I had a great time with this, I do have to admit that this is a glorified mobile game, so I can't put it too high in good faith. But still, it's high B tier for me. Astropop was the very first game I played for this ranking, and I'm glad I started things out on a positive note. I feel like this game is the dividing line, where everything after this is past the point of being just good and is pretty comfortably great. The objective of Astropop is to match 4 blocks of the same color, and you have to do so fast enough so that the blocks don't hit the bottom of the screen. The gameplay reminds me of Tetris but in reverse, which is a pretty interesting concept. The aesthetic is super charming. The super weapon is something straight out of that show Kids Next Door, which was one of my favorite shows as a kid. Speaking of, the super weapon is like the only real difference between each character, but that's not really a big deal to me. It's also pretty cool that there was a progression system where you can upgrade each character's weapon. That was a pleasant surprise for this type of game. And the sound design too. The combos in this game feel great. When the announcer says, "Hyper combo," I do actually get hyped. I feel the same way about the music, although that's no surprise for Popcap as we're coming to find out. I feel like there's a weirdly high skill ceiling in this game, again similar to Tetris. Things were very simple at first, until I realized you can pick up multiple blocks at once. That's when Pandora's box was truly opened, and I understood that this game has layers to it. Overall, a good time, but I only really wanted to play in 30-minute chunks before I got tired of it. Still, this is a fun game. Feeling B tier.
Feeding frenzy.
Feeding Frenzy is one of only 2 games on this list that I played on the 360 growing up, so I have a lot of nostalgia for it. And speaking of, I'm not sure if this is influenced by nostalgia, but I really love the art style here. The fish designs are really cute. Gameplay wise though, Feeding Frenzy is pretty mixed. The main idea of the game is that you eat fish smaller than you and avoid fish bigger than you. After you eat enough fish, you'll get bigger, meaning you can eat even bigger fish. Rinse and repeat until you're the biggest fish of all. This is a really cool concept, and it's super satisfying finally being able to eat the fish that you've been avoiding the whole time. It's a lot of fun. I remember my mom and I were obsessed with this game back in the day.
You just have to be so careful.
Dude!
But I also remember thinking that it was really hard. At first when I was playing this, I kinda laughed at that idea, because those early levels are really easy. I think I made it through like 25 levels or so without even getting a game over.
However, after that point, the difficulty spikes out of nowhere. All of a sudden, there's countless predators everywhere who suck you in if you get even remotely close to them. And those stupid bombs that just appear out of nowhere, those were so annoying. Eventually, I just got so frustrated that I had to stick to the bottom middle of the screen. The top of the screen was too risky since bombs can spawn and insta-kill you out of nowhere. And the same thing can happen on the sides, with predators eating you before you can even react, since there's a slight delay before you can change directions. Overall, this game is very mixed. I love the concepts, I just feel the balancing was poorly executed near the end. There needed to be a more gradual increase in difficulty, then maybe have the last 5 or so levels be super difficult, rather than having to slog through 20 insane levels of tediously waiting at the bottom of the screen. High B tier. I'd say the game's strengths heavily outweigh its flaws, but those flaws are significant.
Across lands of naked aggression. From Phrygistan to Killinggrad, his is the vehicle of oppression, and he rides.
Heavy Weapon really caught me off guard. It might be the most American game ever made. Like, the objective is literally to invade the evil bad guys because we don't feel like negotiating a peace treaty. And the gameplay is just as chaotic as the story. It's a pretty simple side-scroller where you have to destroy the enemies as they fly past you. But man, despite the simplicity, it's overwhelming. There's so many planes, rockets, trucks, tanks, and upgrades flying around, it's hard to keep track of what's going on. This isn't a bad thing though, it just offers a challenge. In fact, I had to replay most of the levels more than once, because some of the stuff they throw on the screen in the later levels really messed me up. This is a pleasant change of pace though, since most of the games on this list are pretty easy. One criticism though is that the levels are just a bit too long. It feels like an endurance test to make it to the boss fight. It's not a huge deal, but it can make things tedious when you're replaying a level over and over again. Low A tier. This one has a lot of character and is super memorable.
Hold up! You promised us our weight in gold.
I did, didn't I? Ever hear of the Midas touch?
Talismania was yet another game that pleasantly surprised me. The concept is super cute. You play as King Midas, who after being greedy is cursed with the Midas touch, turning his daughter into gold. So to undo this, Midas goes around building things for others to show his generosity. The gameplay objective is to connect 2 talismans and create coins via a chain of interlinking pieces, which is that perfect Popcap balance of simplicity. It's just simple enough to simultaneously be easy to understand, but still really addicting. There's also the occasional monster that can mess up the board if you don't get a match that interlinks with it. This is actually an important aspect that shakes up the gameplay, since it forces you to adjust your chain to get rid of the monster, which is a good way to add difficulty to the game. Ironically, the most fun part of this game is trying to be greedy and connecting as many talismans as possible in one chain. When you hit that massive chain though, it's just free dopamine.
Oh!
You can try to go for quicker chains instead, which gives you a better combo, I'm pretty sure, but I barely ever did that. I'm more of a huge chain kind of guy personally, except for in the time game mode, which unsurprisingly I don't really like as much as the main game mode. Another small detail I liked is how after each level you build a new structure, and depending on how good you do, the structure will either be made of bronze, silver, or gold. It's a simple touch, but I actually found it motivating me to get a higher score. Talismania is genuinely an A tier for me. Some people might argue it's too simple, but not me.
Whirly's coming.
Kicking off the top 10, we have Dynamite. My first impression of Dynamite is that it would be another generic match 3 game, which was partially true. This certainly is a match 3 game, however, I think it's one of the best in the genre, with far more strengths than flaws. I think one thing that helps is the aesthetic. This game really leans into that 90s charm, even more so than some of the other games on this list. As far as gameplay goes, getting combos feels especially good in this game, since you're rewarded with a huge bomb for getting a maximum combo.
Combo. Super combo. Cambrian combo. Triassic combo. Jurassic combo. Cretaceous combo. Dynamite combo.
The coolness factor of that alone makes you seek out combos more in this game, as opposed to other games where you simply get a higher score. Another thing that helps set this game apart from the rest of the match 3 games on this list are the physics. Bouncing eggs off the walls open up a lot of opportunities for trick shots. This game honestly reminded me of Peggle in that way, which is by no means a bad thing. The puzzle game mode, on the other hand, it's not it. It's super frustrating when you have one egg left, but the game decides to give you a completely different colored egg. Other match 3 games don't seem to have this issue. It just makes things take longer for no reason. Plus, doing the same level over and over again is really not fun. The same thing doesn't apply to the fossil game mode though, where you have to destroy all the eggs around a fossil to collect it. Getting huge chain reactions was already my favorite part of this game, so having the goal be to drop a huge fossil was super satisfying. The slower pace here also lets you focus more on aiming and getting cool trick shots, which makes things even more satisfying. I actually lost track of time playing this game mode and played for longer than I needed to for the video, which I think reflects how fun this is. Low A tier. This game is pretty great. Zuma is in the top tier as far as match 3 games go. It plays into that Popcap simplicity perfectly, with the main objective being to match balls of the same color, with the occasional upgrade thrown in the mix. It's the perfect blend of simple yet satisfying, especially when you get a meaty chain.
Oh my god, Mom, get the camera!
There's also a lot more strategy involved than there might seem at first, mainly in setting up chains. You can go for safer plays and shoot a pair that's already there, or you can set things up so that you have one color surrounding another and get a chain after you pop the ones in the middle. It's a cool way to be flashy when you're playing. My only real criticism is that on the later levels, things get way too hard way too quick. I do enjoy a challenge, but this might be the only game on this list where I genuinely just couldn't beat it. It's no joke. I was originally going to say it isn't a huge deal, but no. After almost 2 years at this point, I pretty consistently get frustrated at the later levels, which is a shame because those early levels are perfect as far as difficulty goes. The difficulty alone keeps this game from being any higher on this list. Back to the positives though, I love the aesthetic of this game. The ancient Central American look is super unique, and that little frog guy, he's epic. I don't think I played this game as a kid, but this dude was one of the default profile pictures on the Xbox 360. I set him as my profile picture on my alt because he was funny looking. So this dude holds a special place in my heart. Oh, and the music? The games above this have better OSTs as a whole. However, the main song that plays in this game goes hard. It gets stuck in my head pretty much every time I listen to it. And the crazy thing is, it's pretty much the only song you hear in the game, but I never got tired of it. And the variation that plays when you clear an area, it genuinely gets me hyped. A tier. It just misses out on S tier due to that difficulty spike. Zuma's Revenge is a sequel that lives up to the hype of the original, which is commendable since, as we've seen, that isn't always a guarantee. I really like how this game builds off the gameplay of the first. Like, the gameplay is mostly the same at first, however there are gimmick levels sprinkled throughout. Some of the cooler ones were getting to move the frog around on an axis, switching between the two sides of the map, and the boss battles. As much as I love Zuma 1, these gimmicks help make Zuma's Revenge less repetitive than the original. Another small change is the addition of achievements, which are always welcome. The only mixed change is that the levels feel a bit shorter, which makes the game much easier than the original at first, however eventually it gets just as hard. This was really disappointing to me, because the difficulty was the only real issue I had with that first game, so I was hoping that maybe this game would fix that glaring weakness, but no. The art style is about equal with the first game, if not in higher quality, but the music is a bit of a downgrade. I mean, it's fine, but still, that single track from the original is better than anything from this game. Overall, A tier. This is a great sequel that improves upon the original game in most ways. Unfortunately, the biggest issue in the first game was not improved, which gives Zuma's Revenge only a slight boost above its predecessor.
Atomic bomb!
Atomica is yet another match 3, or technically match 4 game. It didn't click with me at first, but the more I played it, the more I started to love this game. It's easily my second favorite match 3 game from Popcap. The objective is to match light-colored atoms together to make molecules. You can't move atoms through each other though, so you have to be careful with how you organize things on the board. The real challenge comes from the randomness of how atoms spawn. They can spawn pretty much anywhere after you make a move, which can lead to some moments where you have to adapt on the fly. Weirdly, this is much harder than it looks. It gets really stressful near the end of each level. Despite how simple it looks, you really have to consider your moves carefully. This isn't like other Popcap games where you can get away with spamming mindlessly. It's also really satisfying to set up combos and anticipate where atoms will spawn. It's probably the part of the game with the highest skill ceiling. Another thing Atomica really excels at is risk-reward. It plays into this with the atomic bombs and the bonus atoms. You have to consider if it's worth going for the bonus atom, or if you really need to use the bomb now, or if you can save it to get a bigger explosion later. These things give the game much more depth than you would expect. The music here is also great. The entire aesthetic is great actually. Dr. Atomicus being the best example. This dude has swag rivaled only by the big money guy. This game is another where I could see it being a good roguelike. My runs ended up being like 45 minutes or so, which is the perfect length for a roguelike. I feel like adding some upgrades and making the board more complicated as time goes on would really push this game over the edge into S tier for me. But as is, it's A tier. I enjoyed this one a lot more than I expected. This game also wasn't for sale anywhere, which is super confusing since it's easily better than half the games Popcap decided to put on the Steam store. Ah well, maybe the game will come to Steam one day. I doubt it, but maybe. I almost didn't include Garden Warfare 2 on this list because I originally thought, quote, I don't really feel like I'd be able to form a proper opinion of this in only 2 hours of playtime, and once I start making exceptions for certain games as far as playtime goes, things just become a mess. And also, I don't really know how I'd compare a third-person shooter to like Chuzzle or something. They're going for completely different things. I still kinda stand by this, but I don't know, it felt kinda wrong uploading this video without Garden Warfare in it. So I bit the bullet and decided to just try this game out anyways. However, yeah, this was an extremely last minute addition, so I'm only gonna talk about Garden Warfare 2 here. It seems like people like both 1 and 2 a lot, and the original isn't on Steam anymore, so I feel like the sequel can represent the entire series here. And yeah, even though it's an outlier on this list, I'm glad I checked this game out because it feels great to play. The characters all have super fun abilities, although I didn't get enough time to truly learn all of them. I knew I wanted to try the corn guy going into this, but the cactus, pea shooter, and foot soldier all felt amazing as well. I mean, yeah, I'm still terrible at this game since I only played for 2 hours, and I kinda had no clue what was going on a lot of the time, but despite that, I still had a lot of fun. Plus, this is genuinely some of the best sound design in any Popcap game. The sound effects make landing shots feel super punchy and satisfying. A tier. I'm definitely gonna come back to this.
Peggle 2!
They say it takes a big man to admit when he's wrong. And look, I'll admit it. I was wrong about Peggle 2. For years I avoided even trying this game because, well, just look at it. I thought there was no way a game this ugly could possibly live up to the original Peggle games. But I was wrong. This game is really great. Gameplay-wise, this is pretty much everything I'd want in a Peggle sequel. I'll touch on it more later, but Peggle Knights already scratched that itch for me of a second Peggle game that has the exact same physics with new characters and levels. So I really don't mind that this game changed up the physics a little bit. Unlike Peggle Blast and Dual Shot, these physics still feel like they're faithful to the original, while at the same time giving this game its own unique feel. The new characters also have interesting abilities. I like the Yeti specifically. It's super satisfying to set off a chain reaction with it. I would have preferred to have the new characters mix in with some of the old ones, since Bjorn is the only original character left, not counting Jimmy Lightning who's DLC, but that's more of a nitpick. The sound design and theming is also fantastic. fantastic. Each character has their own sound font, for lack of a better word, where the music that plays during Extreme Fever changes from character to character, with each getting a different piece of classical music. This also applies to the sound effects that play when the ball hits each peg, which play the notes from that respective character's theme. This is a super cute detail to include, and shows how even in the EA era, where PopCap can feel passionless, there's still bits and pieces where you can see how much these devs care about their games. It's clear to me that a lot of passion and effort went into this game, so it's just a shame that this amazing gameplay and sound design is packaged with one of the ugliest art styles I've ever seen.
What the heck is this piece of crap?
I mean, there's some redeeming qualities to the presentation, like the Battle Block Theater-esque cutscenes and some of the humor. But yeah, I can't really blame my past self for not wanting to play this too much, because Jesus, this is ugly. Ultimately, this is a high A-tier game. It's so close to its predecessors a tier above this, but it's majorly held back by that awful presentation. Feeding Frenzy 2 Shipwreck Showdown is very similar to the original game, except this time around, most of the kinks have been ironed out. The biggest differences are the inclusion of some more power-ups, the ability to jump out of the water and eat bugs, and the occasional boss fight. A more minor change that goes a long way is that most of the predator fish no longer feel like they have a magnet in their mouth that sucks you in if you're even remotely close to them. This, in addition to the power-ups and being able to jump out of the water to avoid predators, makes the game so much less frustrating than the original. The difficulty is also handled much better here. There are some harder levels later on for sure, but they're sprinkled in, and don't come out of nowhere like in the original game. There also weren't many levels where I had to use a ton of continues like the first game. I had to use 1 to 3 lives at most on the later levels, which I think is tough enough without being frustrating. I don't really know if this is because I played the game right after the first game and figured out how to play safer, or because this game genuinely has better balancing, or a mixture of both. But yeah, either way, high A tier. Even with my nostalgia for the original, I have to admit, this is just a better version of that game. It's an overall more enjoyable and less frustrating experience. Bejeweled 3 is definitely the best Bejeweled game, and it's not even close. The more I play games from this series, the more I realize that the main game mode kinda just sucks. Bejeweled at its best takes the simple gameplay loop and does something interesting with it. And luckily, Bejeweled 3 capitalizes on that perfectly with a plethora of alternate game modes. You have so many ways to play the game here. There's Butterfly, Zen, Lightning, Ice Storm, Diamond Mine, and the puzzles, which are a mix of all these game modes. And I basically liked every single game mode except for Classic. But the best mode of all is the poker game mode. Poker is my favorite way to play Bejeweled, period. The goal is to make different poker hands with gem matches. You get 5 turns to make things like a pair, 2 pair, full house, flush, etc. So like, for example here, if I have the 2 green, the 2 blue, and I'm about to get another green here, the 3rd green, that's gonna be a full house. I don't even play poker in real life, but this game mode was amazing. It offers a new way to think about the game that just hooked me for whatever reason. My second favorite mode is definitely Butterflies. It's fun to play slower, like in poker mode, thinking about which moves will minimize the number of butterflies on the board. Again, like poker, you actually have to think, but you aren't rushed. I will say, as much as I think this series as a whole is overrated, I was surprised how it keeps innovating on such a simple gameplay loop. The addition of achievements adds a lot to this game as well. This is the type of game where I think I would come back and 100% it. The only thing that I think this game handles worse than its predecessor is the aesthetic. It's a bit better in 2. I enjoyed that game's space backgrounds with the electronic beats. High A tier. This is the definitive Bejeweled experience, and probably the only game in the series that I'll revisit. We're finally at the top 3, which is a threshold I've reserved only for the best games on this list. My undisputed S tier, which means it's finally time for Peggle. I don't even know where to begin on how good this game is. It's actually unreal. I feel like Peggle has mastered things that most of the games on this list can struggle with. It's simple, but at the same time has just enough complexity to be interesting. The different abilities and when to use them being the biggest avenue for skill expression here. But also things like knowing when to go for points to get a free ball, or mastering the physics to get a perfect shot. The game also has the perfect balance of skill versus randomness. Because yes, ultimately there is a decent bit of RNG here, since a lot of the shots do end up being a leap of faith.
Oh my god!
However, like I mentioned, there is a decent amount of skill at play here as well, mostly in mastering the physics. And yeah, hitting those crazy shots, it's unbelievably satisfying.
Try to get the one sound.
Oh, I did not do what I thought I was gonna do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
4 in a row.
Pink?
Oh! 5 in a row! 5 in a row!
Everything down to the physics, the sound effects, the zoom in when you hit the final peg, it's just pure dopamine. Going back to the character abilities for a second, this is another thing that makes the game so good. I mean, yeah, not all of them are amazing, but they're all at least usable, and I'd say at least half of them are really good. Once you've beaten the main levels, it's really fun toying around with the different characters to see which ability works best for each level. I've surprised myself before when I thought I was stumped on a level, switching to an ability that I thought would be a total shot in the dark, just to easily clear the level. Another thing that I love about this game that I don't see mentioned too often is the aesthetic. The music isn't anything crazy, but I think that really works. It's chill and fits the vibe of the game. And the art style is actually pretty nice too. It has that cozy, early 2000s flash game aesthetic that I've mentioned before. And I've also mentioned before that I really love that aesthetic. All I'm saying is, there's a reason this game has a cult following. It's so great that it even spawned a spiritual successor Peggle roguelike, which of course I grinded. S tier, without question. This right here is the real Peggle 2, because Peggle Knights is pretty much everything you could ask for in a sequel. And I mean no disrespect to Peggle 2 here. Peggle 2 and I have made amends in recent times, but while that game is a great sequel, Peggle Knights is a perfect one. Popcap saw how good that first game was and said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Since this is basically the first game again, with a new character, new levels, and a cool new theme about dreaming. And I don't think this game needed to be anything more than that. The first game is pretty much perfect as I mentioned, so keeping things similar was the right call in my opinion. But yeah, the main thing that makes me prefer this game to the original is the theme. I love the different alter egos the characters have, and how it affects the artwork in their respective levels. There's some wacky stuff they come up with here, and it gives each section of the game a unique feeling. The other thing that elevates this game above the original is the fact that there are 11 characters to choose from instead of 10, with the new character Marina. She's a good addition to the roster. Her shock ability is super satisfying, and having this extra character only adds to the replay value that first game already had. S tier, somehow improves upon one of my favorite games. There's a reason I have over 20 hours in this game, even though it takes only 4 or 5 hours to beat. It's genuinely a top 5 game for me.
Plants vs. Zombies, baba,
is the unsurprising pick for first place, but damn is it the most warranted pick. Like I said, I went back and forth a lot between this and Peggle Knights, but ultimately, I had to give the top spot to PvZ. Playing this game is a core memory for so many people my age for a good reason. It's got that special sauce, that almost indescribable X factor to it that makes it an instant classic to so many people. For starters, the gameplay. It's essentially a tower defense game where you plant different units to defend your house against zombies, which is an amazing premise. The gameplay loop is simple enough, but has a surprising amount of depth to it. Like, as a kid I would only play with the same few plants, but once I looked into all the different types of plants, I realized there's a lot you can do to get creative with your strategy here. The gameplay is also pretty easy the first time through. My preferred way to play is in New Game Plus, where the zombies are harder and you're forced to use 3 plants the game chooses for you. Now, I will admit, I still think Peggle and Peggle Knights have PvZ ever so slightly beat when it comes to gameplay. However, the reason Plants vs. Zombies is on top comes down to the aesthetic. The vibes in this game. It blows Peggle Knights out of the water. And that's saying a lot since I love that game's aesthetic. The art style of this game is phenomenal. The plant designs, the zombie designs, the area designs, the Zen garden, the little letters the zombies give you, Crazy Dave, all iconic. They pair with the perfectly simplistic story flawlessly, and the music too. It's almost unfair to compare the soundtrack to any other OSC on this list. Again, the closest is probably Peggle, which is blown out of the water. I'm convinced the music played a pretty big role in how popular this game became, because it's just banger after banger after banger. Laura Shigihara went crazy with this, and the sound design as well. It's easy to overlook, but it's another thing this game absolutely nails.
Brains.
It's truly the cherry on top of this amazing game. S tier, no doubt. An all-timer of a game. And my pick for the best game PopCap has ever made. And there you have it, every PopCap game ranked worst to best. A lot of these games were pleasant surprises, and I even found a few hidden gems here and there. But regardless of if you agree or disagree with my thoughts, I hope most of you will come out of this video having discovered at least one game that looks interesting to you. If that's the case, I feel like I did my job well, and I encourage you to seek out that game. Playing games like these can help spark those childlike feelings of simplistic joy that can oftentimes be hard to come by as an adult. I think that exact feeling is why I connect so strongly with a lot of PopCap games. These games can be a fantastic form of escapism back to simpler times. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. I spent a ton of time writing and editing this, so to see that anyone even watched to the end means the world to me. And again, if there's anything like obvious that I missed, just let me know in the comments and I'll make a follow-up short or something saying where I'd place it in the ranking. And one last thing, huge shout outs to Jeff Makes Games on YouTube. This dude archives like every single PopCap game soundtrack on his channel. It was like insanely helpful making this video, so shout outs to him. But I think that about does it for me. Thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next video. See ya.
Do you understand?
No!